Chapter 22. Will was in the open meadow behind Holt's cottage practicing. He had 4 targets set up at different ranges and was alternating his shots at random between the 4 of them, never firing at the same one twice in a row. Holt had set the exercise for him before he had gone to the Baron's office to discuss a dispatch that had come in from the king. "If you fire twice at the same target," he said, "you'll begin to rely on the first shot to determine your direction and elevation. That way, you'll never learn to shoot instinctively. You'll always need to fire a sighting shot first." Will knew his teacher was right, but that didn't make the exercise any easier. To add to the difficulty, Holt had stipulated that he should let no more than 5 seconds elapse between each shot. Frowning in concentration, he let the first 5 arrows of a set go. One after the other, in rapid succession, they flashed across the meadow, thudding into the targets. Will, his quiver empty for the 10th time that morning, stopped to survey the results. He nodded in satisfaction. Every arrow had hit a target, and most of them were clustered in the inner ring or the bullseye itself. It was shooting of an exceptionally high quality, and it proved to him the value of constant practice. He wasn't to know it, of course, but there were already few archers in the kingdom, outside of the Ranger Corps, who could have matched him. Even the archers in the king's army weren't trained to shoot with such individual speed and accuracy. They were trained to fire as a group, sending a mass of arrows against an attacking force. As a result, their training concentrated more on coordinated actions, so that all arrows were fired simultaneously. He had just set the bow down, preparatory to recovering his arrows, when the sound of a footstep behind him made him turn. He was a little surprised to see 3 battle school apprentices watching him, their red surcoats marking them as second-year trainees. He didn't recognize any of them, but he nodded a friendly greeting. "Good morning," he said. "What brings you down here?" It was unusual to find battle school apprentices this far from the castle. He noted the thick canes that they all carried and decided they must have set out for a walk. The closest of them, a handsome blonde-haired boy, smiled and said, "We're looking for the Ranger's apprentice." Will couldn't help smiling in return. After all, the ranger cloak that he wore marked him unmistakably as an apprentice ranger, but perhaps the battle school apprentice was only being polite. "Well, you've found him," he said. "What can I do for you?" "We've brought a message from the battle school for you," the boy replied. Like all battle school trainees, he was tall and well-muscled, as were his companions. They moved closer to him now, and Will instinctively backed off a pace. They were a little too close, he felt. Closer than they needed to be to pass on a message. "It's about what happened at the boar hunt," said one of the others. This one was red-haired, with a heavy dusting of freckles and a nose that showed distinct signs of having been broken, probably in one of the training combats that battle school students were always practicing. Will shrugged uncomfortably. There was something in the air he didn't like. The blonde boy was smiling still, but neither the redhead nor their third companion, an olive-skinned boy who was the tallest of the 3, looked as if they thought there was anything to smile about. "You know," Will said, "people are talking a lot of nonsense about that. I didn't do much." "We know," the red-haired boy snapped angrily, and again Will took a pace back as they all moved a little closer. Holt's training was ringing alarm bells in his mind now. Never let people get too close to you, he'd been told. If they try to, be on your guard, no matter who they are or how friendly you think they are. "But when you go swanking around telling everyone you saved a big, clumsy battle school apprentice, you make us all look foolish," the tall boy accused. Will looked at him, frowning. "I never said that," he protested. And at that moment, while he was distracted by Bryn, Alder made his move, stepping quickly forward with the sack held open to throw it over Will's head. It was the same tactic they had used so successfully with Horace, but Will was already on his guard, and, as the other boy moved, he sensed the attack and reacted. Unexpectedly, he dived forward towards Alder, rolling in a somersault that took him under the sack, then letting his legs sweep around, scything Alder's legs from under him so that the bigger boy was sent sprawling on the grass. But there were 3 of them, and that was too many for him to keep track of. He'd evaded Alder and Bryn, but as he rolled to his feet, completing the movement, Jerome brought his cane around in a ringing crack across the back of his shoulders. With a cry of pain and shock, Will staggered forwards, as Bryn now brought his cane around and hit him across the side. By then, Alder had regained his feet, furious with the way Will had evaded him, and he struck Will across the point of the shoulder. The pain was excruciating, and, with a sob of agony, Will dropped to his knees. Instantly, the 3 battle school apprentices crowded forward, ringing him, trapping him between them, the heavy canes raised to continue the beating. "That's enough!" The unexpected voice stopped them. Will, crouched on the ground, waiting for the beating to begin, arms over his head, looked up and saw Horace, bruised and battered, standing a few meters away. He held one of the wooden battle school drill swords in his right hand. One eye was blackened, and there was a trickle of blood running from his lip. But in his eyes there was a look of hatred and sheer determination that, for a moment, made the 3 old boys hesitate. Then they realized that there were 3 of them, and Horace's sword was, after all, no more of a weapon than the canes they carried. Forgetting Will for the moment, they fanned out and moved to encircle Horace, the heavy canes raised to strike. "Baby followed us," said Alder. "Baby wants another beating," Jerome agreed. "And Baby's going to get it," said Bryn, smiling confidently. But then a yell of fright was torn from his lips as a sudden, jarring force slammed against the cane, whipping it from his grasp and sending it spinning to land several meters away. A similar yell to his right told him that the same thing had happened to Jerome. Confused, Bryn looked around to see where the 2 canes lay. With a sinking feeling, he saw that each one was transfixed by a black, shafted arrow. "I think one at a time is fairer, don't you?" said Holt. Bryn and Jerome felt a surge of terror as they looked up to see the grim-faced ranger standing in the shadows 10 meters away, another arrow already knocked to the string of his massive longbow. Only Alder showed any sign of rebellion. "This is battle school business, Ranger," he said, trying to bluster his way through the situation. "You'd best stay out of it." Will, slowly regaining his feet, saw the dark anger that burned deep in Holt's eyes at the arrogant words. For a moment, he almost felt sorry for Alder. Then he felt the throbbing pain in his back and shoulders, and any thoughts of sympathy were instantly blotted out. "Battle school business, is it, Sonny?" Holt said in a dangerously low voice. He moved forward, covering the ground between him and Alder in a few deceptively swift, gliding steps. But before Alder knew it, Holt was barely a meter away. Still, the apprentice remained defiant. The dark look on Holt's face was unsettling, but, seen close to, Alder realized that he was a good head taller than the ranger, and his confidence flowed back. All these years he had been nervous of the mysterious man who now stood before him. He had never realized what a puny figure he really was. Which was Alder's second mistake of the day. Holt was small, but puny was not a word that entered into it. In addition, Holt had spent a lifetime fighting far more dangerous adversaries than a second-year battle school apprentice. "I seem to notice that there was a ranger apprentice being attacked," Holt was saying softly. "I think that makes it ranger's business as well, don't you?" Alder shrugged, confident now that, whatever the ranger might do, he could more than handle it. "Make it your business if you like," he said, a sneer entering his voice. "I really don't care one way or the other." Holt nodded several times as he digested that speech. Then he replied, "Well then, I think I will make it my business, but I won't be needing this." As he said it, he replaced the arrow in his quiver and lightly tossed the bow to one side, turning away as he did so. Inadvertently, Alder's eyes followed the action, and instantly he felt a searing pain as Holt stamped backwards with the edge of his boot, catching the apprentice's foot between the arch and ankle and driving into it. As Alder doubled over to clasp his injured foot, the ranger pivoted on his left heel, and his right elbow slammed upwards into Alder's nose, jerking him upright again and sending him staggering back, eyes streaming with the pain. For a second or two, Alder's sight was blurred by the reflex tears, and he felt a slight pricking sensation under his chin. As his eyes cleared, he found the ranger's eyes were only a few centimeters from his own. There was no anger there. Instead, there was a look of utter contempt and disregard that was somehow far more frightening. The pricking sensation became a little more pronounced, and, as he tried to look down, Alda gave a gasp of fear. Holt's larger knife, razor-edged and needle-pointed, was just under his chin, pressing lightly onto the soft flesh of his throat. "Don't you ever talk to me like that again, boy," the ranger said, so softly that Alda had to strain to hear the words. "And don't ever lay a hand on my apprentice again. Understand?" Alda, all his arrogance gone, his heart pounding in terror, could say nothing. The knife pricked a little harder against his throat, and he felt a warm trickle of blood sliding down under his collar. Holt's eyes blazed suddenly, like the coals of a fire in a sudden draught. "Understand?" he repeated, and Alda croaked a reply, Yes, sir." Holt stepped back, resheathing the knife in one fluid movement. Alda sank to the ground, massaging his injured ankle. He was sure there was damage to the tendons. Ignoring him, Holt turned to face the other two second-year apprentices. Instinctively, they moved closer together and were watching him fearfully, uncertain as to what he was going to do next. Holt pointed to Bryn. "You," he said, his words edged with contempt. "Pick up your cane." Fearfully, Bryn moved to where his cane lay on the ground, Holt's arrow still embedded halfway along its length. Without taking his eyes off the ranger, fearing some trick, he stooped at the knees, his hand scrabbling on the grass until it touched the cane. Then he stood again, holding it uncertainly in his left hand. "Now give me back my arrow," the ranger ordered, and the tall, swarthy boy struggled to remove the arrow, stepping close enough to hand it to Holt, tensed in every muscle as he waited for some unexpected move from the ranger. Holt, however, merely took the arrow and replaced it in his quiver. Bryn stepped hurriedly back out of reach. Holt gave a small, contemptuous laugh. Then he turned to Horace. "I take it these are the three who gave you those bruises?" he asked. Horace said nothing for a moment. Then he realized that his continued silence was ridiculous. There was no reason why he should shield the three bullies any further. There had never been a reason. "Yes, sir," he said decisively. Holt nodded, rubbing his chin. I rather thought so," he said. "Well then, I've heard rumours that you're pretty good with a sword. How about a practice bout with this hero in front of me?" A slow grin spread over Horace's face as he understood what the ranger was suggesting. He started forward. "I think I'd like that." Bryn backed away a pace. "Just a moment," he cried. "You can't expect me to." He got no further. The ranger's eyes glittered with that dangerous light once more, and he took a half step backwards, his hand dropping to the hilt of his sax knife again. "You've got a cane? So has he. Now get on with it," he ordered, his voice very low and dangerous. Realizing he was trapped, Bryn turned to face Horace. Now that it was a matter of one-on-one, he felt far less confident about dealing with the younger boy. Everyone had heard of Horace's almost uncanny natural swordsmanship. Deciding that attack might be the best defense, Bryn stepped forward and aimed an overhead slash at Horace. Horace parried it easily. He parried Bryn's next two strokes with equal ease. Then, as he blocked Bryn's fourth stroke, he flicked his wooden blade down the length of the other boy's cane in the instant before the two weapons disengaged. There was no crosspiece to protect Bryn's hand from the movement, and the hardwood drill sword slammed painfully into his fingers. With a cry of agony, he dropped the heavy stick, leaping back and wringing his injured hand painfully under his arm. Horace stood ready to resume. "I didn't hear anybody call stop," Holt said. "But he's disarmed me," Bryn whined. Holt smiled at him. "So he has. But I'm sure he'll let you pick up your cane and start again. Go ahead."